of you have seen this presentation before? Okay, quite a few of you. And how many are newbies, so to speak? Good. All right, good. All right, so I'm Linda Longbeliel from, I'm chair of the MBTA Communities Act Working Group, and I'm also a member of the Board of Selectmen. And I'm going to go this way.
I'm William Holmes. I'm the clerk of this committee, and I am the clerk of the select board.
My name is Victor Panak. I'm a resident of Holden, and professionally, I am a town planner for the town of Millbury.
James Scorifus, Holden town resident.
Al Berg, also on the Finance Committee.
Elizabeth Brennan, town resident. Mary Jude Paisley, town resident.
Ken Strom, Holden Conservation Commission.
Thank you all. All right, so tonight we're going to provide some facts about the MBTA Communities Act and respond to questions. So, Mary Jude.
Thanks. I'm going to do a little very brief explanation of the why before we get to the what. The MBTA Communities Act is a state law. It was signed by then Governor Charlie Baker in January of 2021, so 5 years ago. It passed the legislature overwhelmingly, 40-1 in the Senate and 143-4 in the House. It is now, and as it was then, that the ability of housing is limiting economic growth in Massachusetts. You can see the quote up on the slide. So that strong public policy continues now under Governor Healy. What the law says is, it's Chapter 40A, Section 3A, communities shall have zoning bylaw that allows multifamily housing of at least 15 units per acre. And for Holden, that requires us to have a zoning district that covers 50 acres for multifamily housing. Slide. So the statute identifies 4 large infrastructure grant programs for highways, bridges, water and sewer projects that Holden is not eligible for because we have not passed a zoning bylaw. In addition to the loss of the grant funding, the Attorney General is authorized to compel compliance by suing us. The Attorney General has sued us. On January 29th, she filed an action in the Suffolk Superior Court in Boston to take jurisdiction of this matter and have us achieve compliance, nine towns, including Holden. So instead of the town deciding, it's going to be up to a judge in Boston to decide where the zoning district should go. Slide. In 2024, the town of Milton had not complied at that time, and the Attorney General sued the town for failing to comply with the statute. The town argued that the statute was unconstitutional, that it was an unfunded mandate, that there was guidance instead of regulations. The town lost. The town spent $275,000 to be told they were wrong. When the Supreme Judicial Court decided the decision, they said, yes, the statute is constitutional, and yes, the Attorney General has the authority to enforce it. Next slide. So the law requires a zoning district. It does not require any construction. It does not require any kind of specific project. It just requires a zoning district to be established. Holden is required to comply because we are adjacent to the MBTA community. Worcester has an MBTA commuter rail, so we are adjacent to that. And we are only one of the 9 towns that are out of compliance. And I've seen the signs around town that say MBTA Communities Act good or bad, and that's not really the question because the SJC already decided. It's constitutional, it's legal, it's the law. What the statute did say is that the towns have the flexibility to decide where the district goes and what the district comprises. And so that was what we were able to do, except that now we've been sued and somebody else is going to do that for us through the state court, through the Superior Court in Suffolk County and Boston. Slide.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about how the working group was formed and a little bit about the process. So the working group was established by the Board of Selectmen on September 22nd, 2025. I almost said 1925. That dates me. And our charge was to develop a plan for compliance with the zoning requirements of the MBTA Communities Act, to get input from relevant boards and committees, and solicit feedback from and educate the public about the Act and what it means for Holden. We appointed 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, myself and Mr. Holmes, 1 representative each from the Conservation Commission, that's Ken Strum, the Planning Board, that was the chair of the Planning Board, Scott Carlson, and Al Berg from the Finance Committee. 4 town residents were also chosen through a competitive process. People submitted applications explaining their background and what interested them in participating in this committee, and then the Board of Selectmen chose the 4 town residents. We also have ex officio, that is non-voting members. That's the town manager, the town planner, and a consultant from the Central Mass Regional Plan Commission, who's been very helpful. So their job was to support the committee and guide us along the way. Considerations. First, we wanted to minimize overall impact on the town and the residents. We can't say that there won't be any impact. That's just not feasible. But we tried to minimize the impact. We wanted to try to preserve the look and feel of neighborhoods and to minimize traffic impact. Again, we can't say there will be no impact, but we're trying to minimize it. We wanted to avoid zoning over existing single-family neighborhoods. There had been concerns raised about zoning over those neighborhoods and what the impact might be. So we decided to avoid that. We also decided to avoid restricted and environmentally sensitive lands, like agricultural lands, Chapter 61, the various conservation lands around town, things like that. Additionally, we wanted to minimize the impact on infrastructure and schools. We wanted to avoid burdening a single neighborhood. We didn't want to put everything in one place. I'm going to break the rules for a moment and go back. There. So this is where we started. This is a map of Holden. And this map has all of the different layers, the different zones that are off limits to us for various reasons. The dark green shows you the land owned by the city of Worcester for the Worcester watershed. Okay, the Worcester watershed. And you can see that comprises about a quarter of our town. The yellow is land owned by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. A lot of that is state forest. The red blotch in the upper right-hand corner and a little bit here and there throughout town is town-owned land, including things like the landfill, the ECC, et cetera. So, and you can see various and sundry other patches of color, blue and purple, and those are mostly conservation lands. And you can see some kind of green lines or patches. Those are wetlands. And you can see also little black lines. Those are all houses and roads with houses on them. So you can see that we had our work cut out for us. I remember when I first saw this map, I thought to myself, this is going to be harder than I thought. So that's where we started. So the process was that we identified and considered at least 20 locations, current uses of land, and restrictions using the Holden GIS and the state interactive map. We held public meetings and we consulted with required town committees and organizations. So we talked to the Holden Housing Authority, we talked to, we asked for data from the school district, we talked with various organizations, and we discussed at length the impact on existing neighborhoods, traffic, and schools. So you may ask, what is an overlay district? And for that, I'm going to turn it over to James.
So the overlay district is a zone which is placed on top of the existing zoning. The existing zoning does not change. What we had to do was provide an overlay of 50 total acres, at least 25 acres of which has to be on a single parcel. The zoning has to allow for multifamily housing of 15 units per acre. But the point is that the existing zoning does not change beneath that overlay zone. Landowners can use the property how they've always used it. The rules will still apply. The planning board can still enforce said rules. We spoke about that a little bit at the last meeting. There are still going to be things like setbacks requirements as well as a height limit. 35-foot or 2.5 stories, 2.5 stories, the half story being an attic, dormer, or the like. There are two examples of multifamily housing with their densities listed on the bottom of the screen. 12.6, 18.2, split the difference, that's about 15 units per acre. And this is the map that was given to us by the state, similar to the map that Linda brought up. The gray is omitted zones we could not choose. There's some differences, but this is the map, by and large, we did go by. So, like we said, a lot of restrictions, and you can see on the white areas there are much more dense roads, which mean more houses, more communities of housing already there.
I think it's, yeah, your turn. Yes, sir.
So we chose two parcels. This is the Halsted apartment complex on Salisbury Street and also with an access up to Newell Road. So Salisbury Street, it's Newberry Drive. It's known as Newberry Drive. It was formerly Winterbury Hollow, and then it was called the Reserve, but now it's called the Halsted, roughly across from Fisher Road on Salisbury Street. So it's 11 acres. Driveway comes in here. There's 3 existing buildings on the site that total 108 units, 36 units per building. And we are basically, our overlay will be on top of those buildings with some additional possible building area over here in the northwest corner of the site. This is the Trap Rock site on North Main Street, roughly across from Millbrook Street. What we have here is 39 acres of the active quarry for Trap Rock is over here. That's a 160-foot deep quarry. This area here has been worked over pretty heavily over the decades. They've been, I think, in business, I think the website says 1936. They discovered Trap Rock in town when they built the Quabbin Aqueduct in the mid to late 1920s, shaft 4 up on Route 68. They hit what was termed a dike of Trap Rock, and thus we ended up, they found it down here about a mile south. This site has a number of environmental concerns. There's a perennial stream. This is Main Street, 122A. Perennial stream that comes out from on the north, comes across parallel to the highway, and goes through the site and ultimately over towards Cutler Road. You have intermittent stream connecting a wetland in the center of the site. So what we have is, what I illustrate on this slide is 100-foot buffer zone to the wetland area and the intermittent stream. If that is, this is from MassGIS, so we don't know if there is a hydraulic connection, but we presume that there is based on the mapping. But we know that this is a perennial stream. That's an active stream. What the elevations here down at the stream, you got about 900 feet here to 1,080 down here. So that's 180 feet. And I think this is a 1,700-foot distance. So what you're talking about on this site is greater than a 10% from here to here slope. It's a hill, and it's been carved out in various areas over the decades, as I said. It's about 930-foot elevation at the street. A very difficult site, in my professional opinion, as a professional land surveyor for 42 years and a civil engineer. This is a horrible site to try to build on.
Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Victor. I don't know if you want to add anything to this slide, and then we can move on to the next slide.
I don't think I have very much to add other than I did want to point out that the bylaw change that we're proposing along with these map amendments does include a setback requirement of 200 feet from Main Street. So That's quite a distance, and any development on the site, which we think is very, very unlikely to occur, would be set back a fair distance from the street to the point that you wouldn't really see it from Main Street.
And then I think the point of this slide is that when we say that we don't think this site is going to be developed, we just want to point out that there is a working quarry there, and the Massachusetts Broken Stone Company, which operates the quarry, says on its website that both facilities, meaning this site here and another one it has in Berlin, have significant reserves, giving us the capability to supply crushed stone products to our valued customers for decades to come. So it's really not realistic to think that they're going to be developed anytime in the foreseeable future. And in addition to that, the difficulties that Mr. Strom described in terms of developing the site really make it a very poor investment for any developer. So, yep.
So we wanted to make sure there was a clear understanding of what we worked with for research and considerations around the impact of the Act and what we were proposing for parcels. And we wanted to make sure we clarified some of the things about what is required by the Act beyond the density and those kind of issues. So one of the things that has come up a few times in town since this has been proposed is the affordable housing aspect. That is not a requirement of this Act. And our zoning change does not account for any affordable housing. So this is all market rate housing that would have to go in these zones. So for good or for bad, for people who are concerned about the entry of affordable housing units in Holden, this is not the zoning change that would do that. Also, there's been some concerns about requiring the town to invest in infrastructure such as water and sewer. That is not a requirement of the Act. It's not a requirement of any zoning change, really, in terms of if it's up to the developer. Should a developer purchase any of this land, they're the ones who are paying for infrastructure changes that allow them to put in a certain number of units on the properties. We did look at traffic volume. We pulled from research around the country as well as in New England regarding traffic flow studies related to housing development. And we have cited at the end of the presentation some actual references, but the Institute of Traffic Engineers on average has found that multifamily housing actually generates fewer vehicle trips per unit compared to single-family homes. And you might want to conceptualize that these apartments could be anywhere from 1 bedroom to 3 bedrooms, or 4 potentially, but unlikely. So, there's no guarantee that somebody's going to come in and put a whole bunch of 3-bedroom units and get a lot of large families who have multiple vehicles. These could be, you could conceptualize that it would be fewer than your typical Holden single-family home getting built right now with 3 or 4 bedrooms and larger families who are commuting. So it's important to realize that we did look at potential traffic volume, and all we could do is kind of use studies that have already been done, as well as, to consider where we were asking to put them. So the Halsted property is for Salisbury, so ideally people will not have to create additional inflow into the town center. Hopefully they'll be exiting through Worcester or other means to get out to 190 and 290. The Jefferson site is a little trickier. It's definitely on the end of town. That's going to create more flow, if it's ever developed, towards the center. But that parcel would allow people to get out through Paxton, through Rutland and Paxton into Worcester, go through Jefferson out to 190 down Mount Pleasant Ave. So there are alternative routes to people always hopping out of the Trap Rock area, if it's ever developed, onto 122 and going all the way through the center of town. So we did take those things into consideration. Then last but not least was the student impact, the student enrollment impact in the area. And again, we used some studies from the Pioneer Institute and some other resources, including from Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, as well as the Wachusett School District themselves, to inform us that, for example, the multifamily housing that's currently at Halsted is generating not very many students in the Holden schools. Considering there's 192 units, there's only 16 students at Dawson right now from that development. There's only 5 students at Mount View from that development, and there's only 9 students from Wachusett at that development. So that we felt encouraged in some extent and be able to speak to that with some reliable numbers for people who are concerned about 750 to 1,000 new students being in the Holden schools after this happens, if it ever happens. And then also some actual research, as I mentioned, Pioneer Institute says that multifamily housing typically generates less than 1 student per unit and less than single-family homes. Again, when you think about the range of bedroom size units that they could be, because they're not all guaranteed to be large units, working couples, young couples, that kind of thing, not large families settling into most multifamily housing units, generating a lot of kids.
Yes, to make that point even more, when we did the math and calculated the number of kids per unit for Halsted, for example, for Dawson Elementary School, it was 0.08 kids per unit. And so when we took that times the number of units that could potentially be built at Halsted, in addition to the existing units, we came up with a number of 5.333. 5.333 kids, so 5 1/3 kids would likely come from that unit at Dawson. So, and we came up with even smaller numbers for the Mount View and the WRHS. So, it really is not going to generate a lot of kids in our schools. And people have been asking me for Holden data. They've been telling me they want Holden data. Well, this is Holden data, and this is on the parcel that, if anything ever gets developed, which frankly, for both of these parcels, I've concluded that is unlikely for both of them. But if anything was developed, it would likely be here, and this generates very few students. Let's talk a little bit about the potential tax impact. Several studies have concluded that additional property tax and other revenues from new multifamily development usually fully compensate for the additional costs truly borne at the local level. And once again, we have Holden data. In FY 2026, the Halsted apartments paid $567,189 in property taxes. That's a very large sum. And any multifamily complex that was built would pay similarly large amounts. So they would offset a lot of the costs. So an encouraging piece of news is that we submitted this proposed plan to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for pre-review, and that agency responded that, quote, the proposed plan would put the town in a good position if adopted. That's as good as it gets. They aren't going to give us a yes, 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 but that is extremely encouraging. That's as positive as they are willing to state for any plan during pre-review. So we feel that this is very likely to pass. And if you vote yes, there will be no more legal fees. If you vote yes, we can keep local control. Our planning board can manage any development that does happen. It'll still all have to be under 35 feet high. There will be no high rises. So if we want to keep local control here in Holden, we really should vote yes. So we have a survey here, and we'd love you to fill it out, use the QR code, and there are our references. We did a lot of research on this. Thank you very much. So now we'd like to take some questions. If people are so inclined, there's a microphone up here at the table. If you'd like to come up and ask a question or two. Okay. Our first taker.
Not even so much a question.
Yeah.
You need my name and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike Chinchar, I was on 136.
Can you use the microphone so that it picks up?
Sorry, everyone can hear me.
No problem.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we definitely can.
Mike Chinchar, 136 Moscow Road. You stated here my references that you guys used. Have you printed those out or made those available somewhere other than just a quick say, oh, here we have that? And
There-
also,
This PowerPoint's on the website.
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, our website is kind of hard to navigate, so I was not aware that it was, but thank you. That's really the question that I did have, is that, and also the response from Mass State, you have a blurb? Do you have the whole thing that you're going to put out, or just say, oh, it's a good plan? Was that the only response that you got from the state when you submitted this? Or was there a whole thing? Or did you just pick one nice thing?
There was a suggestion about rewriting a sentence.
Okay. I mean, I'm just asking because it's just
Sorry, what?
one quote from...
I believe we got an email from the state.
Yes, I was just wondering what that entire email said instead of just saying, here, this is one part of the email.
Right.
I'm not
Oh, I
saying the
see.
email was negative or anything of the such,
Right.
but it would look better for transparency, saying, here's the email. And be like, oh, here it does say that. Okay, so it has context.
Okay.
I know a lot of people previously at the other meeting, a lot of stuff was like, oh, is this out of context or what? And it just says, oh, here it is. There it is, just like the data that you used of where you got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's it.
That's a helpful suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, the email did say, thank you. So, all right, any other questions?
I've been trying to get some clarity around this, and I feel like I got some conflicting information from the meeting the other day.
Okay.
Is this a acreage that we need to zone, or is there a minimum capacity or a minimum unit that we also have to abide by?
It's both.
It's both.
Yes, correct.
So the other night, it was stated among the panel that the Trap Rock site only has about 23 buildable acres.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So if we are required for 750 units, therefore, I think Halstead is 11 acres.
Correct.
So that is 750 units over 33, 34 acres.
Yes, I guess so, yeah.
Given about much. So you showed up a picture of what 12 and a half units per acre look like, or 15 units per acre look like. But when you do the math, that actually works out to be more like 23, 24. And if you are only committed to, or we could only build some 60-something units at Halstead, then those 23 acres need to take the rest, and that becomes more like 30 units per acre.
I don't think so. One thing is that we can, there are already 108 units on the Halstead site where we have zoned. And so the 64 on top of the 108 comes to 172. So we can count 172. Yes, Victor, please.
So the first thing I'll point to is the bylaw that we're adopting with these maps, which states explicitly that at the Trap Rock site there is allowed a maximum of 587 units, and at the Halstead site there's a maximum of 172 units. So the reason we put in that maximum in the bylaw is it comes out to a 15 unit per acre density across the entirety of these sites. When we're talking about the Trap Rock site, you are correct that because a portion of it isn't buildable, the 23 acres that remain would, within those 23 acres, have a higher density than 15 units per acre. But across the entirety of the site, all 39 acres, it comes out to 15 units per acre. At the Halstead site, the existing units presumably won't be taken down. So that's why we expect that there would only be an additional 64 units.
64.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so then, not to say that what you displayed was incorrect, but it's kind of misleading, because if you're doing the 565, 585, whatever it is, over 23 acres, that turns out to be 25 units per acre.
I don't know the math exactly, but it's not.
Oh, I just did on my phone. I mean, anyone can come out here, take a calculator, do the math. You do 585 divided by 23, you get close to 25 units per acre. So why not show what it could be at that point? If you're showing what it could be for 12 and a half or 15 and a half, what does 25 look like?
It doesn't look much different because the dimensional requirements of the bylaw still apply. So the buildings can't be higher than 35 feet tall. The setbacks still apply. All of those dimensional constraints still apply to the buildings, and so they can't be much bigger than they would be under a 15-unit per acre density anyway.
And you can fit that amount of density per acre. Again, this is 25 units. What you're showing is, yeah, I could build high, wide, but then what do those units look like? And how do you squeeze in? Again, I live on a sub-acre plot. And to think of putting, I have like a 0.9 acre. So call it even 1 acre. I'm having a hard time stating what would 25 or, anything north of 20 would actually look like on my property. And then you have to do that again for 23 or 24 acres at that point. So I think it's just a little misleading to say, oh yeah, well, this is going to be the height restriction, it's going to look the same. Well, it's going to look a little different because you are compacting everything in. So, but I think also the other point, and it was a big point that wasn't talked about tonight and kind of disappointing, was the issue with the farm next door.
The farm. Yes. Let me, I'm sorry, go ahead. Did you want to say something, Al? I apologize.
Yeah, I was going to say, as long as we've got the calculator out, let's do a little more math. It's fun.
I love math.
1 acre is 43,560 square feet. And if we go at 25 units per acre, that breaks down to 1,743 square feet per unit, which wouldn't be enough for even a two-bedroom plus driveways, plus roadways, plus buffer strips. So it is impossible to build a 25 units per acre on that trap rock site. Absolutely impossible.
Right, because
Okay, so if it's impossible, let's take that out. Hello, Attorney General. Hello, Maura Healey. We're putting a plan for it that is practically impossible for us to even consider, even if we wanted to. Why would they accept it?
It complies with their requirements. That's why they would accept it.
I think that is going a stretch too far, just because it complies. Again, you look at what the Attorney General said. She's suing these towns because we need to build. We need to build these units.
She's suing
The
the
Attorney
towns
General-
because they did not zone
Yeah.
for
They
the
do not zone.
units.
But
No, I
why-
have a copy of the complaint and I can show it to you, but the Attorney General is saying we need to comply with the law, period. She's asking the judge, make them comply with the law, issue injunctive relief to comply with Section 3A. That's all it says. There's nothing that says the town has to make it palatable for a builder. There's nothing that says they can't be tiny studio apartments with no parking. There's nothing that requires any kind of project, and that's up to a developer to figure out all these infrastructure complaints and whether there's any kind of marketable project that they could put on land that meets the statute. We've met the obligations of the statute.
Right, exactly. And as Mr. Berg said, there needs to be room for roads and sewer and all those kinds of things. So 25 units per acre would not be feasible. I think that's very important to understand. So in terms of the Lilac Hedge Farm, I put the map back up there that shows the Trap Rock site and then shows where it is relative to the farm on the right. You can see there are at the closest point, it's about 210 feet from the farm site, and then it expands from there up to about 570 feet, and I think even a bit more. It's a little hard to see on this screen. So, we did request information from the gentleman about his insurance company's statements to him and whether there were any standards that they had that they could share that might help us try to address the issue. He has not been forthcoming with any additional information. So, we are where we are.
I think for the audience, though, can you state what the issue is?
That's a really good question. I'd like to hear him again state what he said. He said he called his insurance company and told them that, I believe what he said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there was going to be multifamily housing built next to his farm. Is that your understanding of what he had to say?
I think he approached them to say, I just found out that we've got a overlay zone that could allow for multifamily housing to be built here. Again, probably using whatever was publicly available from a statistics standpoint, whether that's 750, 650, I don't know. I talked to him for maybe 4 minutes.
Well, one thing is that, as we said, the Trap Rock site is highly unlikely to ever be developed for all the reasons that we stated. And insurers typically go on actual risks, not potential risks. And it could potentially even be an unfair business practice if, in fact, they try to go on potential risks. So I think that he needs to dig deeper into this to really find things out. And we would love to have talked with him more about this, but he seems to not be interested in that. So.
Well, I mean, he also stated that he reviews his insurance policy year after year after year with his insurance company or his agent, some point like that. I also know plenty of commercial insurance people as well. And again, having something like this pop up will give pause to an insurance company. So for the audience here, again, since it's not coming from the dais here, his insurance company said they will drop him. And he's got 100 cows, mama cows with calves. If you know that, mama cows get protective. And when you put potentially 500 and something units, how many people will occupy those units? 1, 2, 3. Again, the law, you flashed a sign up there that said, hey, this is, we need to secure our 25 to 35-year-olds. Well, those are the people who are getting married, having kids. So you can anticipate that it's going to be more than just one. It'll eventually be 2, maybe 3 before they can find a house. I agree with that. But you're looking at hundreds, maybe up to 1,000 people that's going to be living next to a farm. And you can understand why an insurance company would say, that's a little too much risk for us to take on. Otherwise, they would ask him to pay more for insurance.
I'd love to know more from the insurance company exactly what their concerns were and whether they're concerned about an actual risk or a potential risk 20, 30, 40 years down the road. So,
well, I think the issue is just that it's beyond the purview of this group. We were charged to look at the state map and to see the parcels that were available, and if a potential neighboring or nearby landowner is going to have a dispute with a particular insurance company, that's not something this group has enough knowledge to discuss, and it only really comes into play if anything is ever built, which seems unlikely, and it's just super hypothetical and beyond the expertise of anybody here to talk about a private contract between a property owner and an insurance company. So I just don't think that it's a topic that we can address.
Mr. Berg wants to speak.
What we can talk about, though, and I touched on this the other evening with Mr. McKay, I asked him whether he was aware and whether his insurance company was aware that multifamily housing can now be built on the Trap Rock site even without this zoning change. Our zoning bylaw allows for both affordable housing and it allows for senior citizen projects on that site with planning board approval right now. So I asked him, A, if he was aware of that, and B, if he'd informed his insurance company of that, because it seems that there's no difference between that situation and the possible situation of our zone change. And interestingly enough, that's the point at which the transcript will show he stopped talking, and another gentleman took over to divert us away from any answer to that question.
Okay, well, I would ask, how many people are at any given point operating at Trap Rock?
How many
don't
what?
know.
I'm sorry?
How many people how many people are currently operating at Trap Rock? Is it 10? Is it 15? Is it 20?
No
Because
idea.
you made the point that anybody could just go over there from Trap Rock. And I don't disagree with that point.
No, I'm not saying that the workers at Trap Rock. I'm saying that there could be projects built there that look exactly like the projects we're talking about under current zoning.
Yeah, and it's up to the insurance company to look at all those situations and provide him with a balanced price. And if that balanced price can make him profitable, then he would take on that price of the insurance. So there's definitely some risk there.
Well, I would suggest with respect to Mr. McKay, and I do respect his position, believe me, but for one individual to come in with speculation that there's a material difference in the mind of his insurance company between what can be allowed now and what can be allowed then, I think that all of us in Holden, all of us citizens, not just this group, we deserve to have some real hard demonstration that there's a material difference and, in fact, then a problem.
And we have not gotten that. So, Mr. Latham, I want to move on to let other people have a chance to speak. So, who else has a question? Yes.
Michael Maslow, 42 Brennan Way. I just want to follow up on this. If there is, if there's a possibility under the existing regulations that there could be building there that in the lilac hedge owner's mind could imperil his insurance, then we're not suggesting anything different. The situation currently exists that he could have a liability problem. We're not adding to it at all with this project. Is that fair to say?
That was my point exactly, and I think all of us on this side of the table, that side of the table, and at town meeting deserve a real definitive response to that question.
All right, because the impression is being made that the threat is coming from this project, and you've made it very clear that it's not. That it's no different than what it currently exists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have a question? I know a number of you have seen this presentation before, so without any, Mr. Latham, you've had plenty of opportunity.
Just one more question.
Okay, just one. Okay.
The other night you talked about how you wish that you had known to talk to these landowners.
Mm-hmm. No, that's not exactly what I said. What I said was I believe that they had been notified. That it was my sincere belief.
But now that they were notified,
Yes, correct. Yes.
you had wished that. I'd like to take us back to that. I believe it was Bailey Road.
Mm-hmm.
Because you were looking to put 10 acres on Bailey Road as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it took that owner to come to you guys to say, you can't look at
Correct.
my deed.
That's true, yes.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't that have clued off anybody on this working group to say, hold on, nobody communicated this to this person. She's coming to us now at this late stage. Shouldn't you have then taken that opportunity to say, maybe we should reach out to the other landowners?
At the time, I think we were just so involved in what we were trying to get done and responding to her. You know, we immediately looked into the situation, and she had a conservation document that showed she definitely had a restriction on that property. So we were busy responding to that, is the truth. So, let me tell you something. One of the first things I'm going to do after we are done with this particular project is I'm going to propose as a member of the Board of Selectmen that we do pass the required regulation or bylaw to ensure that landowners and abutters get notice. I'm going to make sure that I propose that because it is not optimal to be in this situation where we find out these things at the very last minute. Had we known months ago, we could have accommodated various concerns that people had. When we did know, we immediately took action, and we took that person's property off the table. So,
Linda, can I add just one more point? Specifically related to the Trap Rock site and this issue with Lilac Hedge Farm, I do want to emphasize that if we adopt these zoning districts, they're not set in stone forever.
right.
We need to achieve compliance with the state law as soon as possible to avoid being sued by the state. If we can get compliance for the short term, then that buys us time to fix any issues that might come up. So if this is an issue for Lilac Hedge, I would propose that this district be adopted anyway, and that by the next town meeting, fall town meeting, we could adjust it as necessary to resolve any of those issues. I think it's a priority for the town as a whole, critical priority, that we comply with the state law immediately.
Yeah, I think I second everything Victor just said, but I think before we consider changes to zone, hopefully after this gets passed, we would like to see the correspondence with the insurance company, and it sounds like that hasn't been forthcoming after he's kind of kicked the beehive. So I hope we get to see it.
So, okay, Mr. Latham, you've had plenty of time to speak, much more so than anyone else in the audience, and we have worked hard to address your concerns. So thank you very much. But I'd like to know if anyone else here has any questions. Okay, then. Then I think our meeting is concluded. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, all opposed? Nobody. All right, it is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you coming out tonight. Thank you.